Right. Hello, everybody, and hello, UFOB. We are here for part two interview with Ray Hernandez here. And of course, if you have not seen part one, please go check that out. I highly recommend it just because it's really starts to tackle some of the baseline, the foundation, a lot of the terminology that will definitely be very beneficial to the second part here. And I'm really just going to make a really short introduction. Again, please check out part one. Of course, we have Ray Hernandez, the director of the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, also known as CCRI, which involves many academics, doctors, researchers who really are exploring the overall term of contact modalities. And Ray, you know, as well as with his team, has published several publications, one including Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence, Greater Reality, and A Mind of God. But before we jump into the presentation today, first we'll bring on co-host Leaf.
Hey,
how are we doing today, Leaf?
Hey, I wanted to add one thing for viewers too. In volume one of A Greater Reality, and he has Mind of God in that book, so it's a twofer.
Perfect. Right, and of course we'll bring on Ray. Awesome. How you doing today, Ray?
Excellent. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, glad to have you. And really, I think just given that short introduction, I'll give you the reins for part two here with the presentation.
Okay, just to let your audience members know that this is a formal PowerPoint presentation. It's as if someone is in a lecture, and some of it is academically inclined. Much of the information you're going to be hearing, you're not going to hear anywhere else. And some of the information might be difficult to digest if you are a materialist, especially a materialist ufologist. So, again, please feel free to interrupt me, ask any questions, and while I move through this PowerPoint presentation. It is quite lengthy, and it is a formal presentation. The name of the organization that I represent is the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute. In terms of my background, I have several advanced degrees. I went to University of California, Berkeley for a Ph.D. I later on became an attorney, and I'm recently retired after working 45 years as a tax attorney with the Department of Treasury. And our website, and I'm going to repeat this many times, is agreaterreality.com. agreaterreality.com. And should anyone have any questions, or if you want to get copies, free PDF copies of all of my books, just send me an email at info@agreaterreality.com. All right. The title of my presentation is Towards a Unified Theory of Consciousness and the Contact Modalities. Previous to March of 2012, I had zero interest in the topic of the paranormal, near-death experiences, OBEs, UFOs, anything associated with the paranormal. I would have thought that anyone that was interested in these topics was crazy. I was a pure materialist. This is a photo of our dog, Nena, my ex-wife, and my daughter. My daughter just graduated from college. She's 21 years old. Back in 2012, March of 2012, my wife began to pray for a miracle because our dog, who was 15 years old, was totally paralyzed. She then spent all night praying, and when we woke up in the morning, this is what we saw, what she saw. And after she saw that, she began to yell for me to come downstairs. And she wouldn't tell me what it was, so she dragged me out of bed, and I went downstairs. And when I got downstairs, what I'm about to tell you is a little bit unorthodox, to say the least, but my ex-wife disappeared right in front of me. The dog disappeared right in front of me. I had, I could only see in the center of what I was looking, which was this energy being right in front of me. All around me was darkened. I couldn't see. So this graphic drawing provides a graphic depiction of what I was seeing. And then this intelligence, this energy being, then took over my conscious thoughts. I didn't care that my ex-wife disappeared right in front of me. The dog disappeared right in front of me. I didn't care that I was watching this object. I just merely waved my hand at it, and I said, this is bullshit. This is what she got me up for this junk. You know, I'm going back to sleep. Then I turned around, went back to bed, and I immediately became unconscious. And then when I woke up an hour later, I then was fully conscious, and I ran down the stairs. And then my wife was celebrating in the middle of the living room because our dog was running around fully healed in our living room. She had rematerialized right in front of me and the dog began running all over the living room. She had a miraculous medical healing. And then since that day, it began almost 4 years of nonstop paranormal experiences for me. And my wife had many, many experiences as well. This is just one of numerous examples of the experiences that my wife had. 2 months after we saw that energy being in the living room, my wife went outside. This is at 3 o'clock in the morning because the dog woke her up. And she heard this very large noise. And then when she looked up, it was this huge object. And this is a graphic depiction of the object. It was gigantic. It was literally a football field wide. It was very close to her. And then when we woke up in the morning, she said, oh, my angels came and visited me last night. And I had no idea what she was talking about. And she said it was outside. It was huge. It was in the sky. And then after I asked her to draw it, when she drew it, I said, what you saw was a UFO. And she said, you're an atheist. You wouldn't understand what I'm talking about. It was, God that came to me in this object in the sky. So she saw and called her first of many UFOs that she called. So in August of 2012, 6 months after that experience in our living room, I then decided to do what my wife had been doing for the last couple of months, which was to call down what was then what I called a UFO. And within 15 minutes, this object appeared. And I was waiting for my friends, these two adult friends, husband and wife, and their daughter to come. And then this object appeared within 15 minutes. And then my friends began to question what we were seeing. And then while they were right next to me, my friends were becoming more skeptical. And I just started laughing. And with my mind, I conveyed to this intelligence. I said, you better come up with some better crap than this because my friends don't believe you. Immediately, the appearance of the craft totally changed. Instead of that object that you saw previously, what I was now seeing was about 40 huge Volkswagen-sized orbs, very close to the ground. They were within 100 feet of us. And they were all blinking on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. And then they would took turns powering up to these huge orbs and then powering down. And so then my friends obviously stopped trying to explain away because this is not something that you could explain away. And it was later on upon realizing that, I realized that this was a holographic projection because here I was watching this object, and I immediately thought, look, you better do something better than this. This is not doing the trick. And immediately that disappeared, and a totally different object was presented. So this was not a physical object. This was a holographic projection. And then later on, I realized that this was a huge object, the first object that we saw. It was like 3 blocks long. And then I realized that we were the only one that watched this. Because the latter part of it, the end of it, was over a 6-lane highway. And so, in addition to that, I received my very first of many telepathic communications, and it was my daughter's voice, which said, Daddy, the next time you see a UFO, please call me. I never spoke to my daughter about UFOs, okay? And neither did my wife. So here I was hearing my daughter. So then I ran over to the window and I yelled at my daughter to come outside. So this is before my friend arrived. So in total, it was 1 hour of having this interaction with these two very different large objects right outside my home. And the objects were literally right on top of us. I could have gotten a rock and hit the lower end of that object. And then I began to have numerous diverse types of paranormal experiences over the next 4 years, as I said. But let me describe another major experience. I'm skipping over tons of experiences, but another major experience which led to the beginning of my academic research was when I was driving my car to go to work in downtown Miami, Florida, at 8:30 in the morning in the middle of a traffic jam in the biggest highway in Miami, stuck in traffic. All of a sudden, I was taken out of my body and I was brought to another reality. And very, very detailed and lengthy explanation, which we just don't have time to explain. But it was in this reality was where I was shown the nature of our reality, which is a virtual and spiritual reality. And I was told my mission of what I needed to do. Now, the important part of all of this was not the actual experience itself, but what I was told was that all of what I now call the contact modalities, all of the paranormal, needs to be viewed as one integrated phenomenon under consciousness. I was then given very specific visual downloads of each of the different contact modalities that I was shown. I was told that these are just examples, but and I was seeing it inside the huge wheel. I was inside the fulcrum, and each spoke of the wheel was moving around, and I was getting visual downloads and visual information of what each phenomenon was all about. And what I was told was that what humans call consciousness is actually the very fabric of our reality. And it's the glue that holds all the contact modalities together. I then received instructions of what I needed to do. And within 50 hours of this experience, I was introduced to the three co-founders of what later came to be called the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. And it was within 50 hours. It was 2 days in a row. And let me give you a couple of those details. Basically, on the second day, Dr. Rudy Shields gave me the telephone number of Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the late Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who was the founder of the Institute for Noetic Sciences. And he also was Apollo 14 astronaut. He was the sixth man to walk on the moon. And he was a brilliant, brilliant genius. And he understood that all of the paranormal is integrated. And he also had written several papers discussing the quantum hologram theory of consciousness. So here I was at his home within 48 hours of this experience. The second person is Dr. Here's a detailed information about Dr. Edgar Mitchell, as told by Dr. Dean Radin, who's the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences.
I knew that Edgar was very interested in pursuing the UFO ET contact idea, because he had become convinced through his own experience and through his contacts with other people that there was something there, there's something worth studying. So his part of his genius and his passion was to use the best tools that we have, the tools of science, to understand the full range of experiences. So in the case of looking at the larger body of a very wide range of experiences, this is where Edgar was very interested, and Free has basically taken up the mantle for that part. So in a sense, we're like sister organizations. We're taking, as best as we can, laboratory approaches. You're a little bit ahead of us in that sense, and finding out, well, what's happening in the population at large.
So Dr. Radin is saying that we're like sister organizations, but we're ahead of what they're doing in trying to understand the paranormal phenomenon and its relationship to consciousness. Dr. Rudy Shields, I was introduced to Dr. Rudy Shields by Mary Rodwell, and I spoke to him literally 24 hours after I had my experience. He called me. I had no idea who this man was. And Rudy is an emeritus professor of astrophysics at Harvard University. He was at Harvard for 45 years. And he had been interested in the topic of the relationship between consciousness and what we now call the contact modalities for numerous years. And he was a very dear friend of the late Dr. John Mack, who was a professor of psychiatry at the Harvard School of Medicine. And Dr. Mack had been doing research for approximately 10 years on UFO contact experiencers. And Rudy was pretty much the only professor that defended Dr. John Mack when they were trying to expel him from Harvard because of his radical thinking about the UFO contact phenomenon. So another brilliant genius. And this man called me literally 24 hours after I had my experience.
Today, we confront one of the most exciting developments in the history of our civilization, the understanding of our participation in a universe teeming with life. We need an academic study to scientifically investigate the nature of our involvement in a greater universe of living beings. I'm Dr. Rudy Schuld, the Executive Director of the Foundation for Research in the Extraterrestrial Experience, an international study program intended to research the program of extraterrestrial visitations. We ask for your support for our scientific study, both with financial contribution and with participation.
And just for everyone to know, Dr. Rudy Schuld was the director of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. So here we had a tenured Harvard astrophysicist as the director of this academic research institute. Now, the person that started it all off was Mary Rodwell. When I arrived home, I was at work and I just couldn't do much work after having that experience. I was freaking out. And later on, when I arrived home, I got an email from Mary. Mary Rodwell is a UFO contactee researcher from Australia. And she had investigated over 3,000 UFO contact experiencer cases. She had been doing this for over 30 years. So I had sent an email to her literally 6 months before. And she sent me an email that said, "Dear Ray, I'm sorry that I did not respond to the email that you had sent 6 months ago, but it just popped up on my computer today," which is the very day of my experience. And then we wound up speaking till like 1:30 in the morning, and we agreed to continue. And I didn't know that she had been working very closely with Dr. Rudy Shields. And so the very next day was Rudy called me, because Mary had given Rudy my email and telephone number. So after all of these experiences, I had a download of what I needed to do, which was the world's first comprehensive academic statistical research study on UFO contact experiences. And that came to me when I woke up on Saturday morning. And then I wrote up all the details of it, and I sent it to Mary, Edgar, and Rudy. And I said, this is what I dreamt basically last night. And I typed it all out. And they said it was brilliant. And I said, would you like to join forces, the four of us, to do this? And they all agreed. So there we had the four co-founders of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. Now, it's very important to define this term, the contact modalities. In 2013, this is roughly a year after I had been introduced to Dr. Edgar Mitchell, he had been tutoring and mentoring me about his research, extensive research on the paranormal and on consciousness, and also Rudy Shields as well, and Mary, and several other professors. But Dr. Edgar Mitchell specifically was teaching me about the quantum hologram theory of consciousness. And so I informed Edgar that I was writing a paper, and in that paper was where I introduced for the first time the term the contact modalities to describe all the different ways that humans are piercing the veil of our physical reality and having diverse contact experiences with various forms of non-human intelligence. Edgar and the other professors made some comments, and we had published it in the Free Foundation website, which no longer exists. But later on, we did publish several academic articles in peer-reviewed journals where I used that term, the contact modalities. So if you do hear about it later on in the future, just know where it came from. It came from a 2013 paper that I published. Now, what are the contact modalities? The contact modalities are UAP, UFO contact experiences, which I now call CAP, and I'll discuss that in a couple of minutes. Near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, ghost and spirit communications, astral travel experiences, remote viewing, hallucinogenic contact experiences, mediumship channeling, and other types of human communication with non-human intelligence and its related paranormal experiences. Instead of UAP or UFO, I use the term CAP, which stands for Consciousness Aerial Phenomenon. And the reason for that is that research from the thousands of respondents to the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation Experiential Research Study revealed that tens of thousands of different types of UFOs and tens of thousands of different types of quote-unquote beings are having interactions with us. And because of this, this indicates that these UFOs, UAPs, which I call consciousness aerial phenomenon, and the beings associated with them are actually consciousness-based phenomenon. So I'm going to provide you very specific details to substantiate that claim. Free undertook a 5-year academic research study. Okay, we published this work in a book titled Beyond UFOs: The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. This is an 800-page book, and our book is the world's first comprehensive, multi-language, statistical, academic research study on the UFO contact phenomenon. The data I'm presenting now to you was only from our English language survey. We conducted our surveys in multiple languages, but what I'm going to be presenting now is the data from the English language survey. And they didn't change from language to language. In the Spanish language, for example, it was almost identical, except it was much, much more positive in the Spanish language, the results and the outcomes. So to qualify to take our surveys, you have to, first of all, have seen a UFO. Secondly, you have had to have had some type of contact experience with a non-human intelligence. Those are the criteria to take our survey. Now, the 3 co-editors of our book are myself, Dr. Ruby Shields, and Dr. John Climo, who was a professor of psychology for more than 45 years, and he was a scholar on the paranormal and consciousness. So these are not just some guy off the streets, okay? These are tenured faculty members for many, many, many years at the highest level. Rudy was a professor at Harvard, and Dr. John Climo received his Ph.D. from Brown University. We had 3 surveys. The first 2 surveys were quantitative in nature. We asked 660 quantitative questions. For survey 3, we had 70 open-ended questions, and we received over 10,000 pages of written responses to our survey 3, our third survey. So for 3 years, we published our surveys on YouTube, weekly postings to over 500 Facebook sites, monthly mailing list to over 8,000 emails, internet postings, and our free members at that time, we had about 15 members at the peak of our organization. These are individuals that had their own radio shows, many of them. Kathleen Martin, for example, had her own radio show. Rosemary Ellen Guiley had her own radio show. And so, and we had our own radio show as well for a certain period of time. So it was a constant bombardment for people to take our surveys. And our focus of for publicity was mainly UFO organizations and paranormal organizations, but primarily UFO organizations. And also important to note that we used only conscious explicit memory and not memory from hypnotic regression, lucid dreams, or channeling. And the reasons for this is quite clear. Hypnotic regression, you don't know who's doing the hypnotic regression. You don't know the quality of it. You don't know if the person was professionally trained. And also the field of hypnotic regressions, there are numerous problems associated with that. And obviously lucid dreams, I don't need to go into the details of why not to include lucid dreams and also channeling information. So it was basically conscious explicit memory. And our survey languages was in English, Spanish, French, German, Slovak, and in the future, we hope to do it in Chinese. So for phase 1, we received over 4,350 responses to our phase 1 survey. And that came from over 125 countries. Now, once again, this is just for our English language survey. For phase 2, we had 2,292 responses. And for phase 3, almost 1,500 responses. Now, they became much more in depth, much more detailed as we went along. So a lot of people didn't qualify to continue taking these surveys because by the end of it, we were asking very, very detailed, specific questions. So there were numerous findings, but let me just highlight 8 important findings from our survey. Number 1, these experiences over time, not immediately, but over time, were overwhelmingly positive experiences. Initially, 37% viewed their experiences as negative. Okay? Very important. But over time, these individuals continue to have multiple contact experiences, and these multiple contact experiences became more positive as they progressed. So eventually, by the time they were taking their surveys, only 4% viewed their experiences as negative. Finding number 2, there was a positive transformation of the contact experiencer. Their total personality profile and worldview completely changed. And I'm going to give you specific examples of those in a couple of minutes. Number 3, these experiences that they were having were primarily paranormal experiences and not necessarily physical experiences. Yes, they might have seen a physical being, they might have seen a physical UFO, they might have had the physical aspects of the component, but the overwhelming majority of their experiences can be considered paranormal. Number 4, these experiences involve a manipulation of space-time. These experiences might be interdimensional. %50 of these individuals were brought to what some call a matrix reality, another multi-dimensional reality, similar as if you're having a near-death experience or an out-of-body astral travel experience. Now, these experiences in this other multi-dimensional reality were overwhelmingly positive. And the vast majority of these experiences, spiritual lessons were taught. In this reality, time seemed to stop. Individuals were shown visions of their past, present, and future, and also humanity's past, present, and future. Most of humanity's presentation dealt with ecological self-destruction of our planet. Also, 50% of these individuals reported a UFO-related medical healing. And I'll provide more details of that later on. Finally, 85% understood that there is a relationship between UFO contact, the paranormal, and the spirit world. These individuals finally understood this relationship. But yet, if you're not an experiencer, if you remain to be a materialist, ufologist, just interested in UFO crashes and in physical sightings of UFOs, you're totally lost. You have no idea what these experiencers have gone through and their worldview. So let me discuss some of the details of these 8 important findings. We asked this question, was your experience positive, negative, or neutral? And we asked this question in more than 40 different ways. Let me give you some examples. How would you describe your experiences? Was it positive, negative, or neutral? And as you can see, Negative was only 5%. That's it. Positive was 66%. Neutral was 29%. And again, we were criticized in our survey saying that we were not asking direct questions, vague questions. Is this a vague question? No, it's right in your face. Was it positive, negative, or neutral? If you could stop your ET, non-human intelligence, contact experience, would you? We use that word interchangeably, ET and non-human intelligence, because a lot of people are not familiar with that term, non-human intelligence. They were used to the term ETs or aliens, okay? So we swapped that word out and we gave the definition. So we knew when we meant ET, we meant non-human intelligence. Well, if you could stop your experiences, would you? Well, 84% no. Keep it coming, baby. Keep it coming. Don't make it stop. Do you believe that ETs are bad, malevolent, or evil? Well, 91% said no. Remember, these are thousands of people that took our survey question from all over the world. So are these the views that are presented by the field of ufology? No, because none of these other people that you see on Netflix, you see on Ancient Aliens and all these TV shows, and to go or make presentations at these UFO conferences, none of these individuals have ever undertaken a comprehensive academic statistical research study of UFO contact experiences. That's why I can reasonably argue that these folks that speak at these conferences are totally clueless of what really is going on at the experiential level. Let's look at the specific types of beings, okay? Everyone thinks that people only see short grays. Short grays. Well, they're not the number one type of being people were seeing. The number one type of being was the energy being, 55%. The number two type of being was the human-looking being. That's at 52%. Then came the short grays at 51%. Then the spirit in ghost form at 47%. Then the tall grays. Then the reptilians. Then insectoid. But the largest category, which I didn't put in there, okay, was other. When I do this chart again, I'm going to put that in there, other. Other was like 60%. They saw something else that you couldn't categorize in these categories. Now, let's look at the negativity rates here, okay? Everyone thinks that the short grays are evil, deadly. They do experiments on them. They're doing genetic experiments on them. They're cutting us up to pieces, you know. Well, 11% viewed their experiences as negative. That's it, 11%. And most of these people was because of how these beings looked. They were scary looking. So it wasn't that in the end they viewed it as negative, you know. It's only 11%. Now, reptilian at 23%, we want to find out why all these other categories were roughly 12% or less, okay? Why the reptilian was at 23%? Well, we looked at the responses, and we looked at the written responses for the people that had reptilian experiences and the write-ups of the reptilian experiences. And what we found out was that most of these people were scared of what the being looked like. That's why they said it was negative. It wasn't that the being did something horrible or evil to them. You know, since they were shitting in their pants when they saw this huge 8-foot-tall being literally a few feet from them. And that's how they usually appear. They appear right in front of you most of the time. And with a long tail, crocodile face. So that was the reason why it was so large. Approximately how many times have you seen or interacted with this or these non-human intelligent entity or entities? Well, as you can see by that chart, the overwhelming number, 677 people said, I saw them more than 20 times. Okay. Another 105 people said was between 11 to 20. 170 individuals said between 5 to 7. 374 people said between 2 to 4. The smallest number was 14%, and that said, I only saw it once. Now, the people that viewed these beings, this intelligence, these species, as negative, was mainly the people that saw it once, maybe twice, okay? Not the people that had continued experiences. This is a chart that shows The more experiences you had, the more positive was your outlook. Okay? So we asked the question, changing your life in a positive way. And so more than 20 times of seeing and interacting with these beings, you can tell us almost 75% said that this is a highly positive experience and it changed their life in a positive way. Now, contact resulted in a positive transformation of the experiencer. Let's go over some of those examples. Let me just highlight what was strongly increased and what was increased somewhat, okay, from how they were before, okay? So the question is, since my first UFO contact experience, okay, let's go over the questions. My desire to help others, my compassion for others, my appreciation of the ordinary things of life, my sensitivity to the suffering of others, my concern with spiritual matters, my desire to achieve higher consciousness. As you can see, these numbers fluctuated between 75% to almost 90%. So increased. Okay? This is positive things. This is how these people change. My appreciation of nature, my spiritual feelings, my concern with the welfare of the planet, my understanding of what life is all about, my personal sense of purpose in life, my concern with ecological matters. As you can see, most of these are strongly increased from how they were before. So the result was you get a totally different person. The whole worldview, their world of reality, of their lives, of who they are, totally transformed for the positive. Now, wouldn't you want this to be what your spouses, your children, your friends, your parents, wouldn't you want them to think the way these people think? They would become better human beings if they would change this way. Now, again, you're not going to see this in UFO conferences because these people are totally clueless, these speakers that go to these events. All they talk about is, the next UFO crash, flying saucers, videos, all of that stuff. These are materialist approaches to ufology. And that does not explain what is really taking place at the grassroots, at the experiential level. Now let's look at what strongly decreased. What decreased was my concern with material things. All of a sudden, they don't care about getting a new Mercedes-Benz every year, okay? Let me deal with that, 2012 Honda Accord. I can deal with that. My interest in organized religion, again, strongly decreased. My competitive tendencies, they no longer care about squashing their coworker to get ahead. My fear of death, look at that. 73% no longer fear death. Isn't that, so important? My desire to become a well-known person, to become famous, again, strongly decreased. The next major finding is UAP contact experiences have had primarily paranormal and not physical contact with non-human intelligence, either before or after the sighting of a UAP. So we asked the question, and the responses were yes or no. As you can see, all of the yeses are highlighted in blue on the right-hand side. Have you ever had an out-of-body experience? 80%, 8 out of 10 people said yes. These out of thousands of people, they had an out-of-body experience. Near-death experience, 37%. A medical healing. Look at that, a whopping 50% had a medical healing. Did you ever receive telepathic communications? You got 78%. Yes. Did you ever been brought to a matrix reality and have contact with non-human intelligence in this matrix reality? 50% said yes. Have you ever had a past life memory? 66%. Have you seen what is commonly described as a ghost or a spirit? 76%. Do you have memories or visions of being brought to heaven or what is commonly called the spirit world? 46% said yes. Have you seen small colored orbs? 67%. Have objects mysteriously appeared right in front of you? Those are called aports. I've had a couple of those. 25%. One is a ring that I'm wearing on my finger. Very lengthy story. Have material objects ever fallen or suddenly moved around you without any reasonable explanation? A lot of people call this poltergeist effect in their homes. 61%. Can you see or feel energy or auras around people? 74%. Now, communication, okay? Did the non-human intelligence communicate in your native language? 75% yes. Doesn't matter what language was the servant. If it was in Spanish, it communicated them in Spanish. If it was in French, it communicated in French. If it was in German, it communicated with them in German. Did they impart reassuring messages to you? 61% said yes. Did they provide you a spiritual message? Did they provide a message of love or oneness? Did they express to you concern about humanity's behavior? All of these were majority yes. Okay, contact and relocation to another dimension. As I stated earlier, 50% of these UFO contact experiencers have had contact with non-human intelligence and an OBE-like multi-dimensional reality, a reality with no boundaries involving a manipulation of space-time. And this happened to me, which I mentioned to you earlier when I was taken out of my car in the middle of a traffic jam. Now, the people that were brought to this other multi-dimensional reality, to a matrix reality, that was 749 people. The people that said that they were taken to a UAP craft, a UFO craft, was 708. And then when we looked at the details of these experiences, roughly more than half of these experiences were people went through walls, okay? It was like an out-of-body experience. If you ever talked to or researched the out-of-body experience, you'll be interviewing Preston Denton in a few weeks. He goes through walls. He goes through objects. He gets brought to other areas, okay? So this is similar to an out-of-body experience that people are having. Also, was the contact via an abduction, a forced taking? Well, 489 people were brought via an abduction. But if you'll see later on, the abduction phenomenon is very, very different from what you think it is and what everyone else thinks it is. Now let's focus just on being brought to this other multidimensional matrix reality. These are the types of beings that people were seeing in this reality. 37% viewed human-looking beings. 31% saw a spirit form or ghost-like type of beings. 32% was other. And in terms of the grays, it was 16% was the short grays and 13% was the tall grays. Okay? And so, but the overwhelmingly type of beings that people were encountering were the human-looking beings and the spirit or ghost forms. 750 people have had contact with non-human intelligence in this OBE-like reality, a reality with no boundaries, similar to you're in the middle of outer space in a matrix reality. 584 people saw these types of entities. I already mentioned to them before. Now, 66, almost two-thirds of these people said that their consciousness was separated from their bodies. So they were not in their bodies when they were having these experiences. They perceived that it was not their bodies. It was just their consciousness, their soul, their spirit. So let me look at some of those details. We asked these questions, and what's highlighted in yellow is just the yes response. Was your consciousness separated from your body? 66.7%. Were your senses more vivid than usual? 76%. And 38% said it was actually more vivid than usual. And 38% said it was incredibly more vivid. They were like more alive, more aware. Their senses were much more aware in this other reality. Now, did your thoughts speed up? 50%, 57% said yes. Faster than usual? 29%. Incredibly fast than usual. Their thoughts? 27%. Did you encounter a mystical being? 79% said yes. Did the reality of this multidimensional experience seem real to you? It's extremely important. 84% said yes, it seemed very real to me. Did time seem to speed up or slow down? 76% said yes. Did you feel a sense of harmony or unity with the universe? 69%. Did you suddenly seem to understand everything? 59%. Now, this is very typical of people that had NDEs. If you get brought to an NDE-like reality, some people call it heaven, okay? A good majority of people said, all of a sudden, I seemed to know everything. I seemed to understand everything. But then when I was returned, it was taken away. Same thing with UFO contact experiencers. Same thing. 59% for UFO contact experiencers. The scenes from the future come to you, 41%. The scenes from the past come to you, 31%. Now let's talk about the miraculous medical healings. 50% of the individuals had miraculous medical healings. Chapter 6 of our book, Beyond UFOs, reported 10 very specific cases of medical healings, UFO medical healings, where the medical records were reviewed by Dr. Joseph Burks. He's a retired emergency room physician, also a fellow contact experiencer. And the other co-author of the book was Preston Dennett. And Preston has written 2 books on UFO healings. And we recently discovered that Kathleen Martin, who is one of the 10 cases, she recently went public with her UFO medical healing. And when we wrote our book, she did not want to release that information, but now she's public about it. Preston Dennett recently wrote a book titled The Healing Power of UFOs, 300 True Accounts of People Healed by Extraterrestrials. So he was one of the co-authors of our book. So the topic of spirituality and spirit world experiences. We asked the question, numerous questions on this topic. What we found out was that 97% believe that non-human intelligence can travel to other dimensions. 91% believe that there's some sort of a grand plan in motion and that experiencers are part of it. In other words, these are orchestrated events, which I call orchestrated by the mind of God. 89% believe that there is a connection between non-human intelligence and the paranormal. 83% believe that there is a connection between non-human intelligence and the spirit world. 31% were given a message about God. This is what was given to you by the non-human intelligence. 30% were told about the death process and the spirit world. 28% were told where they are from. 26% were given a message about reincarnation. 24% were given messages about past lives. 25% were shown how to do energy work. 25% of this intelligence told these individuals about their mission on Earth, what they were supposed to do. So why did we begin our research study with the UFO contact experiences? Okay, well, if we suspected that that the UFO phenomena was part of all of the other paranormal phenomena, we knew that MDEs had an extensive research on MDE. That's been extensively researched and studied since 1975. The out-of-body experience was also extensively studied by numerous other academics and medical institutes around the world. Same thing now recently with hallucinogens, with psychedelics. Now there are numerous universities around the world who are studying the use of psychedelics as medical therapeutics. But they've also discovered that these psychedelics are very similar to a near-death experience. You have contact with non-human intelligence. Roughly 50% of the cases, people are having contact with a non-human intelligence. Remote viewing, the Stanford Research Institute was engaged in remote viewing for many, many years. But what did we have with the UFO field? Zippo, nothing, nada. We had minimal academic statistical data on that phenomenon. So what we believe was that the experiencers of the UFO contact phenomenon holds the key to understanding the nature of the UFO contact phenomenon. And eventually, together with NDEs, OBEs, all of the paranormal, the UFO contact phenomenon can begin to address the question of what is consciousness, because of their many diverse paranormal contact experiences with non-human intelligence, as I just presented. These people are having primarily paranormal experiences and not necessarily physical experiences. Now let's get into some of these specifics of these alternate theories of the UFO contact phenomenon. First of all, let me begin by discussing the father of ufology, Dr. J. Allen Hynek. He was the director of the main researcher of Project Blue Book for numerous years. And he's widely known as the father of ufology. Well, he changed over the last 2 years of his life. He began to present a totally radical, different perspective. He changed from being a materialist to being someone that's exploring the multidimensional consciousness aspect of the phenomenon. So what he stated was the intelligence behind the UFO phenomenon might not be a physical being from a physical planet, but instead might be an interdimensional phenomenon based on consciousness. So let's hear and see one of his interviews before he passed away. And again, ufology does not discuss this because they don't want to get into the topic of consciousness. They totally dismissed the statement by Dr. J. Allen Hynek.
My own philosophical feeling about the UFO phenomenon is that when all is said and done, it represents some form of intelligence. But whether that intelligence is from great distances away, or whether it is perhaps much closer to us in a parallel reality or in another dimension, or whether it is in some strange way a product of our own intelligence, our own psyche, I don't know. This is the research problem. That it seems to be programmed, that it seems to have an intelligence of its own, I think is unmistakable. If anyone who studies the subject just sees that. But we must not jump to the conclusion that because it has an intelligence of its own, it is necessarily visitors from outer space. It may be in some strange way connected with that intelligence, if that intelligence can in some way project itself down here. But, well, that's really all I have to say. That's it.
Please replay that over and over and over again. This is the father of ufology saying that the UFO phenomenon might not be visitors from another planet. Might be something much more complicated. Now, let me present now the father of modern ufology, Dr. Jacques Vallee. I mean, no one can argue with me that Dr. Hynek and Dr. Vallee are the two most prominent ufologists of the modern era over the last 50 years. No one comes close to them. So let's talk about Dr. Jacques Vallee.
I think that from my own point of view, I'm going to be very disappointed if UFOs turn out to be nothing more than visitors from another planet, because I think they could be something much more interesting.
Something from another dimension, a space or time?
I think what the UFO phenomenon is teaching us is that we don't understand time and space. Mm-hmm. Here are objects, I think we have to call them objects, that are physical, that interact with the environment, that cause effects on the witnesses, on the psychology and the physiology of the witnesses, and leave traces on the ground, and yet are appear to be capable of manipulating time and space in ways that go beyond what our physics understands today.
Again, Dr. Jacques Vallee was echoing the same hypothesis of Dr. Hynek. But yet no one talks about Dr. Jacques Vallee, one of the world's most eminent researchers and academics on the UFO phenomenon. No, they don't want to talk about that. Why? Because they're materialists. Okay? And that leads to their deception. They're totally clueless, these materialists, of what really is going on at the grassroots on the UFO phenomenon. And that comes about by studying the experiencer of the UFO contact phenomenon, which Dr. Vallee did and Dr. Hynek did. So let's get into a little bit more about Dr. Jacques Vallee. And let me give you an interview by Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, who has interviewed Dr. Vallee 5 different times. Dr. Mishlove has interviewed thousands of PhD academics, theoreticians, scholars on the topic of the paranormal and on consciousness.
Dual aspect monism, as some people might say. It doesn't much matter to me. You can quibble about the words you use, but at some level, we're all interconnected at every level. Let me talk about Jacques Vallee for a moment, because he had an additional insight, and his insight was that all of these phenomena, from religious miracles to UFO sightings to folklore concerning little people and large people and people who came half fish and half human and taught the early Sumerians the basics of what we now think of as culture. He said this is part of a system which is attempting to manipulate, you might say, or guide, you might say, or interfere with, you might say, but somehow to influence humanity, but at a subconscious level, not at the conscious level at all, at a deeper, we could call it the mythic level, which really informs all of human culture. He didn't know what the source of it was. He even suggested it could be humans, it could be deities, or what we think of as deities, higher intelligences of some sort. He didn't want to specify exactly what sort, but it does suggest that we're not alone in this universe or on this planet, that we are here interacting with something. Now, some people say it's ourselves, maybe ourselves from the future. There are many different ways to slice the pie or to look at it, but it does suggest that what we think of as reality is much richer, deeper, larger than we normally consider. We go through life with blinders. Jacques Vallee in particular, but also, as you mentioned earlier, Edgar Mitchell and John Mack are encouraging people to consider this larger world in which we're interacting, that we are not alone. In fact, we have been in the company of other intelligences throughout recorded human history, and undoubtedly even before.
Again, I want to pose the question, has anyone been at a recent major UFO conference and heard this discussed? This is the principal theory of probably the world's major ufologist that's alive today, Dr. Jacques Vallee. Well, I can tell you, no, you're not going to hear that. Why? Because this is a non-materialist perspective. It's a consciousness-based perspective. And in terms of the argument that it's an attempt to change humanity, you saw what happened to the thousands of experiencers. They totally changed for the better. So this is what's happening at the grassroots. This is what the UFO phenomenon is all about. Dr. John Mack, a tenured professor at the Harvard School of Medicine, professor of psychiatry. He also was a Pulitzer Prize winner, a brilliant man, and a very dear friend of Dr. Rudy Seals. He wrote a book on the UFO contact phenomenon titled Passport to the Cosmos, Human Transformation and Alien Encounters. It was in 1999, I believe. And what he stated in the book was that people know their experiences and what they have undergone does not fit with the prevailing mechanistic worldview. Large percentages of people seem to know there is an unseen world or hidden dimensions of reality. Now, what I'm going to talk about is CCRI, okay? After we published our book, Beyond UFOs, I had numerous radio interviews. I was invited to discuss that some UFO conferences, but not the major ones. And people got to hear what we were doing. And some people understood, but the vast majority of people still had a difficult time grasping the data findings from our research findings. I was totally ignored by all of the other speakers, all of the other ufologists. People criticized me as woo-woo science, but yet they were not scientists. They did not have a PhD, and we had all the PhD scientists in our organization. But we were being seen as a ufologist organization, which we were not. We were an organization that was dedicated to understanding consciousness and the nature of our reality. So what we decided is we changed the name of the organization. We added additional individuals that were focused primarily on consciousness and other aspects of the paranormal. And we became known as the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute. As I said before, go to our website. You can download all of our books for free. It's greaterreality.com. And if you want me to send you a PDF copy of our books, just send me an email, info@greaterreality.com. Also, you could download all of the articles for volumes 1 and volume 2 of our book, A Greater Reality. They're all there, article, chapter by chapter. CCRI is a 501c3 academic research institute focused on researching what is consciousness. We have 20 PhD academics, 5 medical doctors, and 10 lay researchers. We're in the process of publishing a 4-volume book series titled A Greater Reality. We already have volumes 1 and 2, which are theoretical chapters. I have a draft version of volume 3, which is the first of our 2 experiencer chapters. Each of these books are 800 pages in length, and they are all free. That's FREE. In the future, we're going to be conducting a cross-comparative research on individuals that have had various types of contact with non-human intelligence via what we term the contact modality. What is our view? What do we hypothesize? CCRI hypothesizes that we are interacting with non-human intelligence via various paranormal phenomena, and that all of these contact modalities might be derived from one source, and thus might be one phenomenon. A summary of some of these phenomena, okay, which comprise one phenomenon. Telepathic communications, almost all the time in one's native language. Major personality transformation, ghost visions, visions of energy beings, ghost beings, human-looking beings, medical healings, reincarnation, visions of the future, of the past. People are being brought to a matrix reality, recognition upon their return. For example, a lot of people that had UFO contact experiences all of a sudden are able to know what might happen in the future. They have these heightened precognitive abilities. Same thing with near-death experiences. Same thing with out-of-body experiences, et cetera, et cetera. All of these individuals, upon having their initial major experience, return to a life of paranormal experiences. Many NDE experiences, for example, begin to see dead people, ghosts and spirits. Same thing with UFO contact experiences. They begin to get spiritual messages. There's a manipulation of electronic devices. There's several major NDE researchers which noted that. And that's been a calling card of UFO contact experiences, but also of NDE experiences. Also the topic that consciousness is non-local. All of these experiences involve a manipulation of space-time. And all of these phenomena involve experiencing a multi-dimensional reality. So we hypothesize that consciousness is what unifies the contact modalities, and that consciousness is fundamental and not our physical reality. Now, what in the world is consciousness is fundamental? Let's get a little bit more specificity to this concept.
I realize the conundrum here.
Okay.
That our science, based upon a Newtonian materialist deterministic concept, would say that consciousness, or how we perceive things, is an epiphenomenon, a byproduct of matter, of the accidental organization of matter. But in the ancient traditions, the oral traditions, they perceive that consciousness is the fundamental stuff, and matter descends from consciousness.
That was the late, great Dr. Edgar Mitchell, founder of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is the premier academic research institute in parapsychology.
In our previous discussion about integrating the near-death experience, you described your journey as a materialistic scientist, and what that means is that matter, inert dead matter, is the fundamental bedrock of everything we experience in the universe. But there's another point of view. It's actually a very ancient point of view with a noble philosophical tradition, which is the opposite, that consciousness is primary, not matter.
The hard problem of consciousness, which is the extreme challenge in the neuroscience of consciousness and philosophy of mind, in trying to come up with any mechanism by which the physical brain might give rise to consciousness, is a very daunting issue. And in fact, most of the people I know involved in the scientific study of consciousness are now moving to much more expanded models. And it's because they realize that the simplistic notion of the physical world being all that exists and the brain is somehow creating consciousness out of purely physical matter is completely false. It does not explain even the rudiments of conscious awareness in our consensus day-to-day reality. So the whole world of psychology and examination of mind and consciousness is revealing all kinds of ways that we can be aware of things beyond the ken of our physical senses. Things like remote viewing. You know, the psychic spy programs in many government agencies over the last many decades, showing that there are ways that people can train to actually know things beyond the ken of their physical senses. Out-of-body experiences are something that many people have kind of come to discover on their own and have taken advantage of. And so these are all ways of saying that consciousness is not limited to the confines of the physical brain and the body. And of course, the big implication of all that is what happens when the brain and body die. And there it looks very strongly like the reality is not only that our consciousness continues beyond death of the brain and body, but that it actually expands tremendously in its kind of scope and understanding.
So Dr. Eben Alexander was a professor of neurosurgery at the Harvard School of Medicine. I mean, you can't get any more complicated than that. And he had a near-death experience, was brought to another reality, and it totally changed his life. He quit medicine, and now he's researching this phenomenon and giving lectures.
Consciousness is first. If it's primary, if it all starts with a one consciousness and everything else is then part of that one and evolves from that one, and we all have this, we're all part of the unified whole. We're all both one, we're all the one, and we're also a unique part of the one.
I think the primary reality is consciousness, and that physicality is projected by the consciousness to give continuity to the narrative aspect of life. That's what I think.
Well, that's Dr. Raymond Moody, a medical doctor and a Ph.D. philosopher, professor of philosophy. And he started the whole research agenda on near-death experiences. And Gary Schwartz was a tenured professor at Harvard University, Yale University, and for many years has been the director of a consciousness research institute at the University of Arizona. And both of them are saying that consciousness is primary. And they're not the only ones. There are literally thousands of professors and academics and medical doctors all over the world that are saying the same thing. The universal mind, the mind of God. We live in a virtual and spiritual reality. One way of thinking of it is that we're that little tiny doll all the way at the bottom. And there's different hierarchies or dimensions. The highest one, which is outside of that last Russian doll, okay, which is everything, because everything is all one mind. And as we progress through our spiritual transformation in the different contact modalities, I can give you an illustration how the human consciousness transverses these hierarchies of dimensions. This is a model of the five senses. Edgar Mitchell always said that ESP was the sixth sense. And on the right, you can see how human consciousness can travel up these different dimensions into these higher astral planes. And also the different intelligence from the contact modalities can travel down and travel back, okay? And there's speculation in terms of what are UFOs, what are OBEs, what are remote viewing, clairvoyance, etc., etc. But let me give you a better illustration. The bottom part in blue are the six senses of human consciousness. The next reality, the human consciousness, as you're having an out-of-body experience, you're going to that orange area, and there you're interacting with our physical reality. You're having an out-of-body experience, but you see your body underneath you. You're going through walls. You're going to another location. Just like remote viewing, you're seeing things, but you're dealing with physicality. You're dealing with earth. you're dealing with the physicality of our reality. But then human consciousness can travel higher up the hierarchy, where you're having interactions via astral travel experiences. And major astral travel experiences talk about different planes, different hierarchies, different dimensions of consciousness, where there are different experiences that are taking place. Now, whether they're actually something similar to what I drew or not, we just don't know. We just don't know. We just know that there are different alternate realities that these individuals that are having astral travel experiences can experience. Now, the highest level that we're aware of is when individuals have a near-death experiences, they die and they return back to source. They return back to the mind of God. And a lot of them talk about reattaching back to the mind of God. And all of a sudden, they know everything. Why? Because they become part of God again. Okay? Now, God, I'm not talking about a religious figure here. We're talking about an Akashic records, a depository of information. I'll be discussing all of that in a future book, which I hope to publish in about a year and a half. Also, the model of reincarnation. There's extensive literature, academic literature on reincarnation. That's done by the University of Virginia School of Medicine. And it was done by two major professors. One is deceased already. And I won't go into those details. But basically, you get born a woman, a man, that's your physical body. When you die, your soul or your consciousness returns back to the mind of God, and then it gets recirculated back as a female. And then once you return as a female, then you remember the life of that man, where he was born, the brothers and sisters, the fathers, how that person died, tons of details. And what these scholars at the University of Virginia have done, these academics in the School of Medicine, they have researched the details of close to 2,000 case studies from all around the world of reincarnation cases. And they were able to substantiate quite demonstrably that reincarnation is a phenomenon that might exist. So spiritual virtual reality. Thousands of peer-reviewed academic research studies on near-death experiences have demonstrated that, number one, we exist inside a greater reality, inside of what I call the mind of God, which is, I can describe as an Akashic record. That's a huge depository of information. It is deeply loving and spiritual, and that we as humans are eternal spiritual beings. Sir John Eccles, Nobel Prize winner in physiology and medicine, and he stated, I maintain that the human mystery is incredibly demeaned by scientific reductionism, with its claim to account for all of the spiritual world in terms of patterns of neuronal activity. This belief must be classed as a superstition. We have to recognize that we are spiritual beings with souls existing in a spiritual world, as well as material beings with bodies and brains existing in a material world. In my upcoming book, which I hope to publish in about a year and a half to 2 years, I will be discussing this in great detail. In philosophical terms, it's titled Dual Aspect Monism. And so I won't be discussing any more further because it gets a little bit more complicated in detail.
One of the primary insights that characterizes mystical experiences generally is the idea that everything is one. All is one. That's kind of the slogan of all the great mystics. And this unifying aspect occurs in the near-death experience too. People say that what we experience in life as differences, really that at a higher state of reality, things that seem different here are really the same. And that includes even personal identity. People will say that in their life review, they become the people with whom they interacted, because when you see an action that you did, you see it in your life review. You watch it from the point of view of the person with whom you interacted, and you are empathically embedded in their consciousness. So really what that means, I suppose, is that because of the interconnections, we are really all one of the same being. We're different, I guess, different facets or aspects of one underlying unitary consciousness. To me, God is not belief or curiosity about whether God exists. I mean, to me, I compute God as a relationship, right? So, to me, the relationship that you have with God, therefore, it boils down to a relationship with all the other conscious presences in the universe, I think.
Well, guess what? Our surveys, the individuals that took our surveys say the same thing. Okay, we are all one. There's no separateness. 80% of these people agree with that statement. The first book, which is the introduction to the Greater Reality book series, is titled The Mind of God, a Spiritual Virtual Reality Model of Consciousness and the Contact Modalities. And this book is available for free from our website. And also, if you email me, I'll send you a PDF copy of that book. And in this book, I lay out a very brief theoretical construct of the nature of our reality. I don't give specifics in terms of the details, but I just lay out a framework. In my next book, I'm going to be presenting a very detailed and very lengthy framework of the nature of our reality. Our Greater Reality is our 4-volume book series. It's titled The Greater Reality, The New Paradigm of Non-Local Consciousness, the Paranormal, and the Contact Modalities. We intend to have 4 volumes. The first 2 volumes are theoretical in nature. Volumes 1 and 2, as I said, are theoretical in nature. It's already been published. Volumes 3 and 4 are the experiencer chapters, and we're about to release volume 3 this month, and volumes 4 will be released in October of this year. Now, volumes 3 and 4 are chapters written by major experiencers of the contact modalities, individuals that have had more than 3 different types of experiences. So, illustration is Dr. Melinda Greer. She's a recently retired medical doctor. She has seen 14 UFOs. She's had 2 near-death experiences, numerous out-of-body experiences. She's had 3 Sasquatch experiences. After her second NDE, she began to see many dead people, ghosts and spirits in her hospital. So she's just an example of what I presented earlier, that these individuals are having not one type of experience, they're having a whole cornucopia of paranormal experiences. And that's what volumes 3 and 4 are all about, demonstrating that in chapters written by experiencers. In terms of volume 1 and 2, as I said, these are academic chapters, and these are the types of categories of individuals that authored our chapters. We have 25 PhD academics, 5 medical doctors, and 10 lay researchers. Now, The Mind of God is 200 pages. Beyond UFOs is 800 pages. And volumes 1 and 2 are 800 pages each. And volumes 3 is also going to be 800 pages each. I can give all of this to you for free. Just send me an email at info@agreaterreality.com. Now, the last thing I'm going to finalize is by discussing our documentary. We've been spending 6 years developing a documentary titled A Greater Reality, One Man's Journey of Discovery. And let me present a short trailer for our documentary.
Well, I would say my near-death experience in many ways changed me completely.
The first time I had an experience with the beings, I was about 5 years old.
I'm able to travel outside of my body on the astral plane, and I have done since I was 9 years old.
It's like your vision is not from the eyes, it's from something else.
My name is Ray Hernandez. I'm an IRS tax attorney. I had zero interest in anything that was paranormal related. And then my life was turned upside down. Holy shit, what the hell just happened?
Would have an out-of-body experience 3 or 4 times a month, and I learned how to move. fly, walk through walls. The elements of a near-death experience are, first, separation of consciousness and out-of-body experience.
I detached from my lifeless body. There were beings, spiritual beings swirling around me and bringing me peace.
A being of complete compassion and love and knowledge.
I was shown things that you just don't see in this world.
When I opened my eyes, there was Katie, this little girl spirit. I wanted to know where she was buried. I'm going to the cemetery and she's guiding me. Right here is her little place.
And their eyes were these glowing, green, blue, iridescent, beautiful eyes, but kind of spooky because they were so bright. It was like looking at a hologram.
So what I discovered is as people become more aware of their experiences, that their perspective in life is changed.
I think one has always changed. I think that's what our ancestors were trying to tell us. And so I started looking at the Bible in a different way.
Everybody got on their camels and converged on Bethlehem to see what's up with that star up there.
Consciousness is at the heart of all of this. It is that glue that binds all of these experiences together.
Our consciousness includes the physical universe. It includes the cosmos. Everything we know about quantum physics and cosmology.
We are saturated with intelligent life right here and right now.
And it's only by bringing all these pieces together, both finding their commonalities and how they can each inform each other, that we can then see the big picture.
Is there life after death? Do we live in a simulated reality? Is it possible that all of these paranormal experiences are somehow interrelated? Humanity needs to change. We need to become much more spiritual. We need to become much more ecological. We need to become much more loving and caring. And that's why it's taking place right now.
It changed my life in a way that I no longer have a fear about death.
And that's what I think we're here to do, is to bring an aspect of God into physical existence.
From my perspective, quantum physics doesn't only allow for the spiritual realm, that is for the afterlife and for reincarnation, for all these things to be real, it insists on it.
This is going to change everything.
Okay, so unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, essentially internet outages, part with Ray Hernandez' PowerPoint presentation was cut a bit short. Thankfully, we got pretty much the majority of the presentation. But what this means overall is that there's going to be a part 3 with the remainder of the PowerPoint, as well as a Q&A with Ray, just to kind of tackle some questions that we've been kind of just building over time, and just have hopefully a nice overall discussion about just the consensus of his work and, you know, where are the next steps. So of course, on behalf of UFOB and the Expereinces series, have a good one. We'll see you on part 3.